The sun burned low across the jagged Afghan ridges, casting long shadows that seemed to crawl across the desert floor. Dust hung in the air like smoke, stirred by boots that crunched in unison. A small squad of Navy SEALs moved with the smooth confidence of veterans, their gear clinking softly with each step. They were men forged in fire, tested by countless missions, and bonded by the kind of brotherhood only war could create. Among them was a new presence, Emily Carter. To a casual observer, she looked like any other soldier, helmet low over her brow, fatigues faded from wear, tactical vest packed with the essentials of survival. But to the squad around her, she was different, a rookie, a woman in a role they had long guarded as theirs. She had earned her place on paper, but paper meant little when bullets flew. What stood out more than anything was the weapon strapped across her back, a sniper rifle. That rifle had drawn mockery since the day she first carried it. "Trying to play Chris Kyle now?" One had chuckled during training, referencing the legendary American sniper. "You're better off with a lighter piece," another had added, smirking as if it were a joke. For the men, the rifle was a weapon reserved for legends, not for a newcomer they doubted could steady her nerves, let alone her trigger finger. Emily had taken the laughter in silence, her calm gaze steady, never arguing, never explaining. But deep down, the weight of their doubt pressed on her like an invisible burden. The mission that day was supposed to be routine: secure the valley, sweep for threats, and extract. It was standard work, something the SEALs had done 100 times before. Yet the valley ahead was deceptive, narrow, steep ridges hemming it in, offering the perfect kill zone for anyone waiting above. The squad advanced with caution, rifles at the ready, their senses sharpened by years of experience. Then it happened. The first shot cracked the air like thunder, followed by a torrent of gunfire raining down from the ridgeline. Dirt erupted in violent sprays, bullets whining past helmets and packs. The squad dove for cover, pressed flat against the unforgiving ground. An ambush. Fighters hidden in the rocks had been waiting, and now the SEALs were caught in the open, pinned under relentless fire. The stakes were brutally clear. If they didn't clear that ridge, the squad would be wiped out. There was no retreat, no backup, no time. Chaos erupted in clipped shouts over the roar of gunfire. "We're pinned down!" one soldier yelled, his voice straining with disbelief. Another cursed as his rounds disappeared uselessly into the high rocks. A seasoned veteran muttered bitterly, "We're not getting out of this one." Even the calmest faces in the unit betrayed flashes of doubt. Fear crept into their voices, disbelief etched into their movements. Emily felt the weight of their panic crash into her chest. For a moment, the mocking words of training resurfaced, sharper than the bullets overhead. She remembered the sting of failure during early drills, the way some instructors had whispered she wasn't cut for this, that she was only here to fill a quota. Her father's stories of combat drifted back too, stories of men who froze at the wrong moment and paid with their lives. Doubt clawed at her, threatening to break her resolve, but her hand found the cold steel of the sniper rifle strapped to her back. It was more than a weapon. It was the hours of relentless practice, the sleepless nights, the quiet determination that had driven her to prove herself. She knew the rifle better than anything else she carried, and now, when her squad was drowning in despair, she knew what had to be done. She crawled forward, her movements deliberate despite the storm of fire around her. "Carter, what the hell are you doing?" one soldier hissed, his eyes wide with disbelief. "That's suicide!" Emily didn't falter. She slid the sniper rifle into position behind a broken wall, her body pressing flat against the dirt. Her voice was steady, almost too calm for the chaos around her. "I can do this. Just cover me." It wasn't arrogance. It wasn't bravado. It was the quiet certainty of someone stepping into the role they were born for. The battlefield seemed to narrow, the chaos shrinking into focus as she peered through the scope. The ridgeline loomed above, alive with muzzle flashes. She adjusted the dial, calculated the distance, factored the wind tugging at her cheek. Her heart slowed. Breath steadied. Time itself seemed to stretch into silence. She squeezed the trigger. The shot cracked like lightning. A figure on the ridge dropped instantly, his rifle clattering against the rocks. The squad around her froze, stunned by the precision. Another flash of fire betrayed a second enemy, and Emily shifted, adjusted, fired. Another target down, the impossible unfolded before their eyes. Shot after shot, Emily's rifle roared. Each bullet was deliberate, cutting through the chaos with surgical precision. Where others had fired blindly, she struck true, dismantling the ambush piece by piece. Enemy fighters scrambled, some firing wildly, others ducking into cover that offered no protection against her gaze. Within minutes, the storm of fire from the ridge faltered, sputtered, then fell silent. The SEALs lifted their heads, disbelief painted across their faces. The ridge that had moments ago promised certain death was now quiet, cleared by the calm determination of the one soldier they had doubted most. A stunned silence settled among them. One soldier exhaled sharply, almost laughing. She just outgunned the whole damn ridge. Another shook his head in disbelief, his voice low with awe. Never seen anything like it. But Emily didn't rise to their praise. She remained crouched, scanning the ridgeline through her scope, her finger hovering near the trigger until she was certain the threat was gone. Only then did she lower the rifle. When one teammate finally asked, "How did you do that?" she answered simply, her voice quiet but unshaken. Someone had to. The words hung heavier than the shots she had fired. There was no boast in them, no pride, just the truth of responsibility accepted and fulfilled. The squad regrouped, their movements lighter now, as though a great weight had been lifted from them. One by one, they clapped her shoulder, gratitude replacing the mocking smiles of the past. Respect, once withheld, was now freely given. As they moved forward, the memory of the ridge burned itself into their minds. Emily Carter had not only saved their lives, she had shattered every doubt they held about her. She had proven that courage was not bound by expectation or image. It was not in being the loudest, the strongest, or the most experienced. It was in stepping forward when no one else would, in believing in oneself when others refused to. For Emily, the victory was not just in the shots fired or the ridge cleared. It was in finally breaking free from the weight of their mockery, in proving to herself that her place among legends was not a dream, but a reality. The lesson endured long after the mission ended. Courage does not announce itself with fanfare. Sometimes it looks like a quiet soldier behind a scope, a calm breath under fire, and a single thought whispered to oneself, "I can do this." And in that valley, under the burning Afghan sun, Emily Carter showed her squad and herself that belief. Responsibility and unshakable resolve can turn the tide of battle, even when the world doubts you. She had outgunned the whole squad, not to prove them wrong, but to prove herself right. The rain had not stopped for 3 days. It pounded the valley with a steady rhythm, turning the soil into thick mud and painting every soldier's uniform in streaks of brown. The squad moved quietly, their rifles held tight, water dripping from the edges of their helmets. The mission was supposed to be a simple reconnaissance run, but in war, the word simple never lasted long. Among the group walked Lieutenant Sarah Donovan. She blended in at first glance, tall, disciplined, silent as she scanned the terrain. Her presence did not stand out. She looked like just another soldier carrying the weight of her gear. Yet, unlike the others, she bore the long frame of a sniper rifle strapped across her shoulder. It was not the usual weapon carried on such missions. The squad had teased her about it earlier, some with mock smiles, others with open doubt. Sniper rifle in weather like this? One soldier laughed bitterly. "What's the plan, Donovan? Hit ghosts in the rain?" "Leave the hero stuff for legends like Carlos Hathcock," another said, shaking his head. "This isn't your fight." Sarah didn't argue. She never did. She simply adjusted the strap of the rifle, her face calm, her jaw tight. She knew their words were not just banter. They didn't believe in her, not truly. They thought she was out of her depth, clinging to a weapon that belonged to warriors from another time. But Sarah remembered every hour she had spent on the range, every grueling test she had passed, every impossible distance she had overcome with nothing but steady breath and focus. The rifle wasn't arrogance, it was part of her. Yet as she trudged through the rain beside men who doubted her, the memory of their mocking words weighed heavier than the weapon itself. The squad entered the heart of the valley when the world suddenly erupted. Gunfire cracked from the ridgelines above, flashes of orange bursting through sheets of rain. Bullets tore through the air, splintering trees, ripping into the mud just inches from their bodies. The SEALs dove for cover, their voices rising in clipped, panicked bursts. "Ambush!" someone roared. Rounds poured down in unrelenting streams. The enemy had prepared this trap perfectly, their vantage point making escape nearly impossible. The squad's rifles fired back, but their shots vanished into the rain and rock, hopeless against the elevation advantage. The truth became painfully clear. If they failed to clear those ridges, they wouldn't survive. Fear spread, not in open collapse, but in the taut panic of hardened men realizing they were cornered. "We can't break through," one shouted. Another slammed a fist against the mud, frustration mixing with desperation. A veteran muttered, his voice heavy with resignation, "We're done here." Sarah felt their words press down on her chest like a weight. She thought of other failures in her past. The mission where hesitation had cost a teammate his life. The moment during training when an instructor told her she wasn't made for combat. The whispering doubts that always followed her. For a moment, doubt threatened to freeze her in place. But then she felt the rifle against her shoulder. The rain slicked across its frame, but in her hands it was steady, familiar. She remembered the silence of the range, the calm heartbeat that carried her through every shot. This wasn't arrogance. This was who she was. She pushed herself forward, crawling through mud toward a half-fallen tree that offered a narrow angle on the ridges. Her squad mates stared at her, disbelief in their eyes. "Donovan, you're insane!" one barked. "That's not going to work." But Sarah's voice was calm, cutting through the rain. "It's what I trained for. Just cover me." She positioned the rifle, her body flat against the ground, cheek pressed to the cold stock. The battlefield seemed to shrink to the circle of her scope. Through the sheets of rain, she caught the faintest outline of a muzzle flash. Her breath slowed. Her fingers steadied. The chaos of the world fell silent in her mind. She squeezed the trigger. The rifle cracked, the sound slicing through the storm. A shadow toppled from the ridge, tumbling down the rocks. For a moment, no one believed it. But Sarah adjusted, caught another flicker of movement, and fired again. Another enemy crumpled. The squad around her fell silent, stunned as they watched. The mocking words they had thrown at her only hours ago seemed to vanish with each shot. Sarah worked with mechanical precision, her mind calm despite the chaos. Wind direction, distance, the distortion of rain, she accounted for it all. One by one, the enemy positions faltered. Gunfire sputtered and broke, as though the storm itself was silencing them. Minutes felt like hours, but slowly the unthinkable happened. The relentless storm of bullets from the ridges quieted. Sarah's rifle spoke louder than all of it. When the last figure dropped, the valley held its breath. The gunfire ceased, replaced only by the pounding of rain. The SEALs lifted their heads cautiously, disbelief etched in their faces. "She just cleared the ridge," one whispered, awe softening his voice. "Outgunned the whole damn squad," another muttered, shaking his head as though trying to convince himself it was real. But Sarah remained still, her rifle steady, her eyes scanning the ridges for any lingering threat. When at last she lowered it, her squad mates turned to her, questions on their lips, respect dawning in their eyes. One finally asked, How did you do that?" Her answer was quiet, almost lost in the rain. "Someone had to." The words landed heavier than the shots she had fired. She wasn't boasting. She wasn't proving them wrong. She had simply done what needed to be done, because no one else could. The squad regrouped, their movements lighter now, the hopelessness gone. Each man who had doubted her now carried something else, gratitude, respect, and the knowledge that their lives were owed to her courage. Sarah didn't smile, didn't gloat. She simply adjusted her rifle, ready to move forward. The valley that had nearly claimed them became a lesson etched into memory. Courage is not always loud or recognized. Sometimes it is a soldier, quiet and underestimated, who steadies her breath and acts when others falter. Sarah Donovan had not just survived the ambush, she had redefined what her squad thought possible. She had taken the weapon they mocked her for carrying and turned it into the instrument of their salvation. For every man who walked out of that valley alive, one truth was undeniable. In the storm of war, under fire and doubt, Lieutenant Sarah Donovan had stood alone against impossible odds, and she had outgunned them all. The desert stretched endless under a merciless sun, its heat pressing down like a hammer. Dust clung to every surface, boots, gear, skin, turning the soldiers into moving shadows of sand and grit. The SEAL squad moved in silence, their eyes scanning the jagged hills that rose on either side of the narrow valley. They were seasoned warriors, men who carried their experience like an invisible shield. And among them, carrying the same weight of gear but an even heavier burden of doubt, walked Corporal Megan Hayes to the outside eye. She looked like one of them, helmet secured, uniform marked with sweat and grit, boots sinking into the scorching earth. But to the men around her, she wasn't just another soldier. She was the one who carried the wrong weapon. Slung across her back was a long sniper rifle, its sleek frame marking her as different. Why lug that around? One of the veterans muttered during the march. You planning to be Marcus Luttrell out here? His tone carried sarcasm, not respect. Another soldier chuckled. More like Audie Murphy in her dreams. Should have stuck to a lighter rifle, Hayes. You'll slow us down. The squad laughed lightly, their mockery masked as banter. Megan didn't reply. She never did. She carried the rifle because she knew what it meant to her. Hours of training. Long nights under moonlight with nothing but the echo of a trigger click and her own steady breath. It wasn't arrogance, it was survival. But still the words stung. They always did. The mission was supposed to be routine. Move into the valley, clear a suspected cache of weapons, and secure the route for convoys. But as the squad entered the choke point, the ground shifted from silence to chaos. Gunfire erupted from the hills above, sharp and unrelenting. Bullets slammed into the sand around them, snapping into rocks, tearing the air with deadly precision. The squad dove for cover, pressed flat against the earth as the ambush rained down. "Contact left! Contact right!" one soldier shouted, panic sharpening his voice. The ridges lit up with muzzle flashes. The enemy had been waiting, their vantage point giving them the high ground and control of the kill zone. Every second the SEALs remained pinned down brought them closer to annihilation. Fear rippled through the squad, though none dared call it by name. One soldier fired upward blindly, muttering, "We can't push through this." Another hissed, "We're surrounded." A veteran clenched his jaw, the hopelessness in his eyes betraying his words. "We're not making it out." Megan's chest tightened, doubt rising like smoke. She remembered her failures during training, missed shots, the sneers of instructors who said she wasn't cut out for combat. She remembered the weight of silence when her name wasn't called for recognition, the whispers that she'd never be as strong as those who came before her. The rifle on her back felt heavier than ever, dragging her down into their disbelief. But then she felt its familiar grip, the cold steel that had been her anchor through every storm of doubt. She closed her eyes for a moment, steadying her breath. She knew the squad didn't believe in her. They never had. But that didn't matter. What mattered was that if someone didn't act, none of them would leave the valley alive. She crawled forward, mud and dust streaking her uniform, until she reached a jagged rock formation that offered partial cover. Her squad mates stared at her in shock. "Hayes, what the hell are you doing?" one shouted over the gunfire. "You'll get yourself killed." Her answer was calm, steady, almost unnervingly so given the storm around them. "I've got this. Just keep their heads down." She slid the sniper rifle into position, the weapon heavy but steady in her hands. The chaos of the battlefield blurred into silence as she peered through the scope. Her world shrank to the circle of glass, the faint outlines of enemies flashing with each muzzle burst. Her breathing slowed. Her heartbeat steadied. Every lesson, every hour of training, every failure and every correction fell into place. She squeezed the trigger. The rifle cracked, a single deliberate note in the orchestra of chaos. One figure on the ridge dropped instantly, his rifle tumbling into the rocks. Another muzzle flash betrayed a second position. Megan adjusted, fired. Another body slumped, vanishing from sight. The squad froze in disbelief. They had mocked her, doubted her, but now, with each echo of her rifle, the battlefield shifted. Megan worked with quiet precision, each movement purposeful. Rain of bullets still poured down, but her shots cut through it with surgical accuracy. One after another, enemy positions fell silent. The squad's panic began to ease, replaced with stunned hope. "She's hitting them," one soldier muttered, disbelief in his tone. "She's dropping them all," another whispered, almost afraid to believe what he saw. Minutes stretched like hours. The ridges that had been alive with fire grew still, the ambush unraveling under Megan's relentless precision. Finally, the last enemy fighter fell, his rifle clattering uselessly against the rocks. Silence returned to the valley, broken only by the ragged breaths of the squad. The men lifted their heads, scanning the ridges in disbelief. The storm that had promised certain death was gone. Their survival rested in the hands of the one they had mocked the most. "She just cleared the whole ridge," one soldier said softly, his voice carrying awe. "She outgunned the entire squad," another added, shaking his head, as though trying to make sense of the impossible. But Megan didn't bask in their praise. She stayed low, scanning through her scope until she was certain the threat was gone. Only then did she lower the rifle, her eyes calm, her face unreadable. When one of her squad mates finally asked, "How the hell did you do that?" her reply was simple, quiet, and heavy with truth. "Someone had to." The words cut deeper than any boast. They were not about pride, not about proving anyone wrong. They were about responsibility. The kind of responsibility that comes when survival depends on someone stepping forward, no matter the cost. The squad gathered themselves, their movements slower now, their eyes often drifting back to Megan with something new. Respect. No one laughed anymore. No one mocked. They understood now. As they moved forward through the valley, the memory of the ambush burned into their minds. Megan Hayes had not only dismantled the enemy, she had dismantled their doubt. She had shown them that courage is not measured in banter or bravado, but in the quiet certainty to act when others falter. The truth was undeniable. In that valley, under the merciless sun with death pressing down from above, Megan Hayes had carried them through. She had taken the weapon they ridiculed, the weapon they thought too heavy, too unnecessary, and turned it into the very tool that saved their lives. The lesson endured long after the mission ended. Courage isn't always loud. It doesn't always come from those expected to lead. Sometimes it is a quiet soldier who believes in herself when no one else does, who steadies her hands under fire, who whispers silently, "I can do this." For the squad that survived that day, respect was no longer optional. It was owed. And for Megan Hayes, victory was not about silencing their mockery. It was about proving to herself, most of all, that courage and determination can outgun doubt, fear, and even death. In that valley, under the harsh Middle Eastern sun, Corporal Megan Hayes outgunned them all.